Well, it's Wednesday. Welcome to the Sean Spicer Show. We are on a glide path to the weekend, I think. We're at least halfway there or over halfway there. So that's a good thing. But there's a lot going on in politics, as you guys know. I mean, Trump up in New York, dealing with this civil case up there. Michael Cohen, his former fixer, testifying for the second day against him. It sounds like something out of a movie. The guy's like, Mr. Trump was never my friend, and I mean, whatever. The third debate is now weeks away, November 8th in Miami. Chris Christie saying that he has made the requirements to take the stage. I'm going to break that down in just a minute. Check this out, though. I talk a lot about third parties, and there's one called No Labels. No Labels has been something that the Democrats, and particularly the DNC and a group called Third Way and the Biden campaign, are particularly concerned about. I'm going to explain to you why, because they've shifted tactics, and it matters. It really matters, because this is sort of a twist that I didn't see coming. And anyway, I think if it goes forward, great. Then Senator Bob Menendez, the guy from New Jersey, he's back in court. Second indictment. He got off in 2017 on a hung jury. But hey, why not try again by taking some money from Egyptians and gold bars and loads of cash and stuffing them with a vest with your name in it? Well, he pled not guilty in the court. I'm going to talk to you about that. Biden, a $200,000 check that says loan repayment from his brother has now been surfaced by House Republicans as part of a investigation. We're going to talk about that. And Mark Halperin, he's going to join with us, talk to us about what we should be focusing on in 2024. A lot to break down. Let's get into it. All right. It's Wednesday. This is the Sean Spicer Show. I want to kick things off with something other than the speaker's race. Number one, Donald Trump back up in New York today, facing off against Michael Cohen. And it's kind of funny. I'm not really unsure. I got asked the other day, why is Trump up there? It's almost like he's giving Cohen credibility. Michael Cohen, his former fixer, lawyer, whatever you want to call him, he sounds like a Goomba. He's like, Mr. Trump, it's, it's silly because he's telling him all this stuff. But Michael Cohen, just so we are clear, is a convicted criminal. He lied to Congress. He was convicted of it. He went to jail, and now apparently he's the media darling because he's against Donald Trump. But Trump sitting in court watching him for the last 2 days, I don't get that one. I'm like, why are you giving this guy the time of day? I don't get that one. Anyway, that's happening. I don't think that's a big deal. And plus, normally that would get attention, a lot more media attention. But with everything that's happening in politics right now, it's just not cutting through, especially the speaker's race, Biden in Israel. So you know what? Maybe he just thought I might as well go sit and watch this thing. This next debate, though, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about. It is coming up. It's in Miami. So far, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley have all said they made it. I think Mike Pence is probably on the bubble. Donald Trump has made it, obviously, but he's not going to go. We know that. But then you got Pence is on the bubble. Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, he says that he has the donors, but he's not in the poll. You need 70,000 donors this time. And again, I don't have a problem with this. Look, you got to show support. You want to be the nominee of the Republican Party. At this point, what we're October, November. I mean, we're 3 months from the Iowa caucuses, folks. If you can't show that you have a base of support, you're not going to win. You'll get killed in the general if you did, by the way. So you need to show support. Doug Burgum says that he's got it, but he doesn't have that polling requirement. Tim Scott has the polling, but not the donors. I think Pence is going to be in a little bit of trouble. We'll keep an eye on it. But the big news out, Chris Christie says that he's in. He says he's made both of those requirements. So we'll keep an eye on that. The next thing I want to get into is this third-party group, No Labels. Now, No Labels is a group that wants to put together a Republican and a Democrat and present them up. The idea is, they're trying to show that there's a better way, that there's a middle ground. So obviously, who's president, who's vice president, I think does matter. And so far, They've talked to a lot of people about, Joe Manchin is the big name that gets talked about leading the ticket and then putting a Republican as vice president. Anyway, whatever. I'll leave that aside for a second because I think this is kind of silly. But anyway, there's a group out called Third Way. It's a Democratic progressive group. And they are kind of now leading the research in the opposition to no labels. Why? Well, there's a new problem that they're putting out right now. So there's a memo that they've put out that basically says that what no labels is doing is not actually trying to win, because initially no labels said, oh, we can win this thing. Well, here's the electoral path to 270 for a unity ticket. Well, now there's a offending slide that they're saying just shows that no label's best shot at influence the general is by fielding a Republican at the top of the ticket, which is not what they had been saying for a while, and focusing their efforts on the 8 likely swing states that we've talked about. Arizona, Florida. They think Florida's not a swing state, folks. Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I think they're missing New Hampshire in that. I'm trying to think because I'm looking at their list and comparing to mine, but they're off. They're adding Florida, which I don't agree with. They're taking off New Hampshire at least. That's one. And they've got Michigan and Wisconsin. Okay. But according to this analysis now, they only think that Biden could win Pennsylvania of the swing states. And the new polling that's not theirs, but others, actually backs that up. So the folks at Third Way have basically been saying that this is a kamikaze mission. What do I mean by that? They think that what No Labels is trying to do is plot this whole strategy of trying to become a kingmaker. What does that mean? It means that they would go in and try to win a few of these states to get enough to send it to the House of Representatives. Because if no candidate gets 270, it goes to the House of Representatives. Then what happens? Well, the House then votes by delegation. So let's just keep this simple. Let's say a state has 3 electoral votes. Actually, Alaska has 3. And this is actually a perfect example. So they would look at, actually it's not, it's by the House, sorry. So you would look at just the members of the House. So let's say a state had 3 House members. They would say there's 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, therefore they get that, it's a Republican vote, right? So each state would get 1 vote based on the number of how their House delegation voted. So if you right now break it down, there are more Republicans controlled states than there are Democrats. The Republicans actually have a 26-22 state edge, and then the other 2 are a wash. So the idea is that No Labels will go in and tell these faithless electors how to vote after winning concessions from either Trump or Biden. And No Labels would then try to maybe get the vice presidency or, make some concessions on issues that they would vote for. And basically what Third Way is arguing is that this is entirely a chaos strategy, that they would allow the House to do this. And this is what Third Way says. It says, in the wake of the big lie in the January 6th insurrection, the danger of a scheme designed to pressure faithless electors into voting as they've instructed by a straw group of elites is self-evident, right? They're basically saying, you guys are now trying to wreak havoc on the system. They're getting nervous. That's the bottom line. That's really what is the bottom line of this. They realize that this strategy, this group No Labels, is a big concern to them. Now, I've said this before, just so we're clear. Third parties are the key to understanding the election. They were huge in 2016. They weren't as big in 2020. So how Cornel West does, how Robert F. Kennedy does, and how this No Labels group does is important. So I'm just telling you, keep an eye on this going forward. But the Democrats are clearly nervous. They're putting out opposition research against them. They're trying to block their access to the ballot. Anyway, I want to move on. Bob Menendez, a senator from New Jersey, he's back in federal court. He pleaded not guilty to a new charge that he was a foreign agent of Egypt while chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Now here, this is some of the reporting. It says Menendez, who withstood a bribery charge in 2017, has insisted that he's innocent, even though he stuffed a bunch of gold bricks and cash into a vest that had his name on it and that was in his closet. I mean, hey, everybody does that. Of course, he says that this is because he's Cuban, because that's what Cuban people do. They stuff gold bricks in cash that they've taken from foreign agents. I'm kidding, but it's pretty unbelievable. And the Democrats, I think you've seen Fetterman and a couple of these other people who are in cycle who have to defend this, saying we don't like them. But Chuck Schumer and others have let it go because they get it. They need that vote. So there you go. Last, before we get in, we got a great discussion with Mark Halperin, I think, about 2024 and where we go. But I want to talk about this new check. We've talked to members of the House Oversight Committee and who are doing the impeachment inquiry about what else is needed. And I had a great conversation a while ago where they were like, hey, we don't need a smoking gun because that's not necessarily how bribery works. You don't always have to have something. You can just show a connection to a family member, et cetera. But House Republicans think that they scored the big one because they got this $200,000 check from James Biden, Joe's brother, that says loan repayment. Well, I think a lot of Republicans went out and said, there we go. We've got it now. Loan repayment, $200,000. Here's the one thing I will tell you, just so before we all get excited. And again, I'll let the investigation play out. That's what we should do. But Democrats are pointing out that in this trove of bank records that Republicans got through a subpoena, there is a check from Joe a year before to his brother James for $200,000 for a loan. So I'm just saying, I'm not there yet. I'm excited. I think that we've started to see some bank records and evidence. That's great. But the idea that you can show Joe paying his brother $200,000 and 6 weeks later he pays it back, there might be something nefarious there, but let's slow our roll down. All right. I want to bring in Mark Halperin. You've seen him before. I've spoken extensively about Mark's reporting and his insight into sourcing and elections and knowledge. I want to break down where we are with 2024. We got Virginia elections headed up. President Trump obviously swinging in these battles, swinging ahead in these swing state battleground polls. What does it all mean? Mark authors a great piece. He has a concierge news service at walkingduck.com/Mark. And you can go check it out there. But he provides unbelievable insight, some amazing opportunities to join him on Zooms and sources. But check it out, walkingduck.com/Mark. Check it all out. His wide world of news is unbelievable. It comes out every day. Anyway, so I want to get to Mark. Let's go. All right, guys, most of us know what it's like to be without power, sometimes for an hour, maybe a day, a couple days after a natural disaster, a hurricane, a windstorm, whatever. But now national security experts are warning that our power grid is more vulnerable than ever. And they've identified 9 key substations, which if attacked, they're saying we could lose power for months. That's why having your own solar power is more important than ever. So I recommend the Patriot Power Generator, which is a solar generator that you don't have to install in your house. It's portable. You can take it with you. You can use it inside your house. And it's powerful enough that if power goes out, we're talking your phones, your tablets, your computers, medical devices, even your refrigerator gets power. So if you go to 4patriots.com and use code SPICER, you get 10% off your first purchase. It's 4patriots.com, includes that Patriot Power Generator. You'll get that guarantee for a year, free shipping if it's over $97, and a portion of every sale is donated to charities that support veterans, right? That's great. So go to 4patriots.com, use code SPICER, 4patriots.com. You do not want to be without power in case something happens. Mark, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. No lack of things to discuss.
Sean, it's what we call in the news business, newsy.
Yes. But I want to take your focus somewhere else. I want to talk about 2024 because I'm talking about a lot of races in the House of Representatives. So let's focus on this for a second. This third debate coming up November 8th in Miami. Chris Christie saying that he's qualified right now. I guess my question to you is, will anything be different? We've seen two debates. They haven't moved the needle. I guess potentially right now, Pence, Tim Scott, and Doug Burgum seem like they might be on the bubble. But does that matter? Will it change the dynamic?
I mean, I think it would take a big confluence for it to change the dynamic, which is to say there has to be space in the news cycle for people to care. There have to be reasons for people to believe that the winner of the debate could become the alternative to Donald Trump. NBC and its partners have to perform to put on a show that is compelling television for reporters watching it live, for the people watching it live, but then in the news cycle that people say, wow, that was something really happened there. And that's a lot of ifs. But if all that happened, and either I think most likely Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis really proved that they were cut above the rest, that they had a theory of the case about how to beat Donald Trump and Joe Biden, maybe. But as you can tell from my litany, color me skeptical.
Yeah. And how much I've been very critical of the RNC for naming NBC a debate partner, right? I have a my view of these debates is that they should be advancing issues and policies that matter to Republican primary and caucus viewers. This is not a general election. This is a primary debate. And I question whether or not NBC is going to do this. Will the RNC, do you think in retrospect, regret naming NBC as a debate? Or because I believe NBC's got to do their job. They're not going to, they want to ask about immigration and infighting. Yeah. And so do you think that the RNC is going to face criticism after this debate is over ever because of who they've named as a debate host?
They probably should. The only reason they won't is because the debates without Donald Trump there have been seen as so irrelevant. Look, you and I have talked about this other model in the past. I think rather than giving the debates to news organizations that a lot of the base are going to see as hostile on the face and then not like the questions, they should rent a hall, get someone to sit, could be an RNC member who's got good TV skills, sit at a table with the candidates and say, all right, you all talk about the deficit and what you would do about it. And just let them talk. Don't have people behind podiums. Don't have the bells and whistles. Let C-SPAN cover it and let anybody who wants take it live. I think they're better off doing that than the path they're headed down. Not just because of NBC, but because this format of 30-second answers and people jumping in and breaking the rules, it's not working.
No, and it's not helpful. You mentioned Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley going after Donald Trump. It seems to me as though for the first time in the last couple of weeks, instead of everyone having their ire trained on Donald Trump, you've got Ramaswamy going after Haley, Haley going after Ramaswamy, DeSantis going after Haley. They've kind of created a circular fire. I assume that benefits Trump the most.
You asked the question you know the answer to. I mean, the people in Mar-a-Lago, they couldn't have dreamed this up. In some ways, in some ways, this is repeating the pattern from 2016. In some ways, it's even better for the Trump people than it was in 2016. Because in 2016, people were trying to take him down. They weren't effective at it, and there were too many of them. But right now, I mean, every day it seems like the DeSantis people have a new attack on Nikki Haley, someone who's barely in double digits. So the fact that Donald Trump is not taking incoming very much, a little bit from DeSantis, but that, as you said, that the other three leading contenders are firing on each other. This could, if Mar-a-Lago were scripting it, they wouldn't do it any other way.
It's funny though, because despite all this, right, you see these battleground. I mean, the long-standing narrative is, well, we have to do this because Donald Trump can't win, and yet now we've seen these battleground polls come out that show, yeah, in almost every one of them, Trump is up or tied with Biden. And among national polls, it shows. And then you've got Tim Scott suspending his PAC suspending their spending. It feels like we've already, it's almost like it's kind of stalled out.
Look, the funniest thing to me is all these columnists and spinmeisters for the other candidates saying, forget the polls. When we're on the ground in Iowa, you can just feel it. You can just feel the voters are turning against Trump, and they're all, even the ones who say they're for Trump aren't really for Trump, and they're open to other people. There's just no evidence of it in the data. And I think that the biggest mistake of analysis and of strategy that's being made, that I hear over and over again from people who want Trump to be the nominee and not, is they're acting like they're in the trajectory to stop Trump, that they don't need to do anything different, and that somehow his lead is a mirage. It's just not the case. And regarding the Democrats, I think we're past the time. There's more than enough data, including a poll this week out of New York, there's more than enough data to say Trump is ahead of Biden.
Right.
They're not tied. Biden's not ahead. Trump's ahead. May not stay ahead, but Trump's ahead. And some Democrats are in denial about that.
All right, folks, we are just a few days away from Halloween. And as the weekend approaches, before you probably maybe make a final decision on your outfit or get excited over the weekend, you want to watch a movie. Maybe you want to watch Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe you want to watch Halloween. But if you go on your Netflix account right now, you're probably looking down at your computer and you're like, I can't access it, right? But you can. You can. And I could show you how. You just have to download ExpressVPN. It lets you change your online location on your computer and trick Netflix into allowing you to watch movies that aren't available in the US. I didn't know this, but there's several versions of Netflix depending on where you live. Your computer, because of your IP address, thinks you're here in the US because you are. But with ExpressVPN, you can trick it into telling it that you're in Canada, and boom, it accesses all of the Netflix movie. And if you didn't have ExpressVPN, you'd have to go to another service like Apple or Amazon. You're talking $50, $100 to get all the same stuff that you actually can get through your current Netflix account with ExpressVPN. There's 100 different companies that you can go to and do it. I mean, I'm talking about Australia. You can go watch all the Lord of the Rings movie. You can watch Top Gun if you tell your computer through ExpressVPN that you're in Germany. How easy is this? It's unbelievable. And it works on everything, phones, tablets, TVs. You just tell ExpressVPN where you are and then go access that country's movies on Netflix. And frankly, it's not just Netflix, but it's Disney Plus and BBC iPlayer, Shudder, you name it. So get your money's worth. Get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free when you go to expressvpn.com/Spicer, expressvpn.com/Spicer. So let's just play a quick little game of candidate assessment.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be sort of an analyst for each of these candidates, and just give me, so Ron DeSantis' team calls and says, Mark, here's the deal. We still got a ton of money in the super PAC. These attacks on Trump really haven't worked. What should we do? What's the advice?
I don't give campaigns advice. I can tell you what the people I'm talking to say, which is the people who want him to win. I hear every day from Republicans who strategists who've been in past presidentials who say, we don't want Trump. And DeSantis is still the horse that can stop him. They want him to pick a frame and stay with it. And just, that's all he talks about. Because as you know, every day he's throwing stuff against the wall. It's hard to know if anything's sticking because there's so much flying. So
see, I think the DeSantis strategy is, sir, with all due respect, go salvage what you have left and then try again after Trump, because it's not going to happen. I mean, and I feel, and I get that. And I know it's tough sometimes for people to hear that, but he is, to your point about pick a frame, he's had enough frames to fill a skyscraper with different windows. And it's, as somebody who actually likes DeSantis, who has thought he thinks he does a good job as governor, my advice to him would be, sir, this is one where we got to just sit it out now, make an excuse to go back to Florida, and then bide time.
Look, based on the reporting I've been doing on him for a couple of years, I've always been skeptical that he was ready to run, particularly against someone as formidable as Donald Trump.
Right. Okay.
But I think what might get him out is,
even if he was ready, I just don't. No, but the thing is, even if he's ready, I just keep thinking that they keep trying these different paths. And every time they drive a path, it gets blocked. Sometimes through their own problems, sometimes because of Trump, sometimes whatever gets blunted in a different way.
Yeah. He's also going to run out of money.
My point isn't disrespectful to him or his campaign. It's like, right.
He may be out of money. That's what might get him out. Look, his other problem now is he's gone all in on Iowa, even though he's going to other states. He's all in Iowa. So's Tim Scott. So's Mike Pence. So it's crowded of the people who are staking it all on Iowa. And the other thing is this thing of relying on the super PAC, it's keeping him alive right now, but it is fraught with all sorts of problems.
I'll tell you the funny thing. When I was up there, I did the First in the Nation primary summit up there, and I was on, there both days doing different things. I showed this to the viewers a couple weeks ago. The paid for by every other campaign, their table was paid for by their campaign. Ron DeSantis's table and all of the swag is paid for by Never Back Down.
Yeah.
That campaign, and everybody brought it up that that's sort of a political animal up there. They've never seen a super PAC do the day-to-day minutia type stuff that has always been in the domain of a campaign.
Yeah. Look, I think it mostly doesn't matter, but I do think it matters on the margins. And I do think that if there was any fairness and justice to the campaign finance laws, they've crossed the line. You know, the Trump people think that. I think they're right. I mean, if the campaign, if the candidates' travel and schedule can be done by the super PAC, what's the actual separation?
Right. So I mentioned Christie. He says he says that he's made this debate. Does it matter? I mean, I just don't see the path. Again, if DeSantis doesn't have a, I mean, Christie keeps saying if I win New Hampshire and then I do this and then I hopscotch down here, but it seems there's no evidence that he's actually got momentum in New Hampshire.
No. Well, look, that's it, right? Is there a path to have momentum in New Hampshire? And the problem is he's got a ceiling of his support. There's just a lot of Republican voters and independents who lean Republican who just aren't interested in voting for him or even listening to him. I do think, though, that if you're making 5 scenarios where Trump is stopped for the nomination, Christie getting momentum in New Hampshire is part of one of them. As you suggest, even if he wins New Hampshire, it's not clear where he goes to win again. But I think if there's some dynamic that opens up a moment for someone to get traction in New Hampshire, he's not the most likely. I think Haley's the most likely right now. She's put in a lot of time there, as you know. But
well, and it's funny. I mean, I hear her name among activists and donors come up more than anyone else. They sort of feel like DeSantis's time is gone. They don't see a path for him. But Haley is where a lot of these folks say, I think she should be given a look. I get that. But again, I haven't seen, I mean, her super PAC's got some money. They're running some ads. I just don't see the results yet.
I mean, you know, if the election were held at the Regency Bar, she'd do quite well, where donors gather. But you know, she's not surging in the polls. She's seen a slight uptick, and Trump's lead is bigger than it was. So again, we can declare it over, or we can look for theories about how someone could do well. She could finish second in Iowa and second in New Hampshire, and then beat Trump in South Carolina. I'm not predicting that. I think the chances of that are de minimis. But she has, at this stage, when voters really aren't paying much attention, she has the hottest hand right now, and that makes her the most likely.
Yeah, I feel like the last candidate that I think deserves any attention, we'll go down the list real quick, but is Ramaswamy. I feel like he had his moment. When I was in New Hampshire, we'll put it this way: when I was in Iowa, there was definitely a sense that people wanted to meet him, to see him. He had a following. When I was in New Hampshire, it's almost like he had jumped the shark and he was starting to fade already.
Yeah, there's certainly a sense of that again amongst the people who are paying attention. I think that you know, the paradox of the fight to try to become the Trump alternative is there are only 2 kinds of candidates who can't succeed doing that. The ones who say, I'm just like Trump, but better, because they're never going to be better than the real thing, which for a lot of voters is Trump. Mm-hmm. And the ones who say, I'm not like Trump at all. And the problem is there's only 2 options. There's just, he's basically said, Trump is awesome. He's the best president ever, but I'd be better.
Right.
And there's just not a lot of market. So I think the ceiling that he has is, despite his skills and despite his media omnipresence, he just has a ceiling on his support. And I think he might have already bumped up against it.
I feel like people wanted to give him a look. And then after that first debate, he had as much momentum as he's ever going to have. And I just didn't see it translate. I want to kind of switch the discussion a little before we leave that, I just want to make sure we're clear on this. So you got Pence, Scott, Burgum routing this out. Is there anybody? I mean, I think that Pence has serious money problems, and I don't see him going further. I think Burgum, yes, he's got enough to keep writing checks, but nothing's changing the game. And then Tim Scott, you know, he may have a little bit more money in that Senate bank account that he can transfer. into his presidential federal account. But I just, again, nothing among those three is doing anything to give me any sense that there's a glimmer of hope for them.
Yeah. When assuming Donald Trump wins Iowa and New Hampshire, as I currently believe he will, and he's basically the de facto nominee, there'll be a lot of press accounts of what happened, right? Why was no one able to beat him? You'll recall when the news was all about Trump and legal problems, they all complained, we can't get any coverage. The only thing we get asked about is Trump. Then it was the speaker's race. Then it's Israel. The challenge for all of them is, can they get enough attention to make a difference? The three you cited, Burgum, Pence, and Scott, I believe have all had their chance. It's not just a matter of they can't get attention. When they've had their moment of attention, and Pence has had plenty, the voters just are not responding. The donors are just not responding. So I think you're right to say that those three are in some ways in a different category. But in terms of attention, I'd group them all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've all had a moment and not capitalized on it. And not only not capitalized, but no one has responded to it. It's not even their fault that they didn't capitalize on it. I think people went, okay, yeah. All right, guys, we are halfway through the work week, but how do I get that way going? I get the energy. Boom. It's because I start my morning off with Morning Kick. That's right. Chuck Norris, we all know him, fitness guru, health expert, looking amazing at 83 years old. He stays the way he is because he uses Morning Kick. And he doesn't just use it, he invented it. He took 10 supplements that he had figured out over time are the best ones, put them into one drink, Morning Kick, and starts his day off every day like I do, because I want to be like Chuck, right? So it tastes great. It's a strawberry lemonade flavor. I love it. I've said this before. I just swish it in some cold water. I like the ice. Maybe you don't. That's up to you. If you go to mymorningkick.com and get it, you decide for yourself. But it's got prebiotics, probiotics, superfood health. It makes you feel great. Extra energy, digestion, mental clarity. You got yourself covered with Morning Kick. So try it. It will, like I said, it increases your energy. It boosts digestion. All those things that make you feel better and start your day off great. It's worth it. You don't even have to skip the coffee. Just have it before. That's what I mean, again, I'm not a big coffee drinker, but that's up to you. If you want to try it for yourself, head over to Chuck's website, mymorningkick.com/Spicer, mymorningkick.com/Spicer.
100%.
All right, so let's move to third parties. I want to start with RFK, and then I want to talk to you about no labels. I am a firm believer. If you look at 2016 versus 2020, the difference between the two elections really comes down to third parties. You had two robust third parties in 2016. You didn't have it. I mean, the clearest example that I've shared over and over again ad nauseum, in 2016 in Michigan, Donald Trump won by 10,703 votes, 0.2 percentage of a point, points of a percentage, tenths of a percent. There were 50,000 plus votes for Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. In 2020, he lost Michigan by 2 points. There was 1,000 votes for the Green Party candidate. That to me is the most illustrative example of how impactful these third parties. And so I think there are sort of three that matter in this race. You've got Cornel West. Him not taking the Green Party line is going to be a big problem in terms of him actually having an impact. But then I think you have RFK and no labels. So let's take them one at a time. RFK, I believe, actually hurts Donald Trump. And I know that some people don't agree with that, but I just believe that the reason that he gets more media attention from Newsmax and Fox News and conservatives is because they love this sort of against the grain, anti-vaccine, but all of his other issues, and that's what people keep saying. Oh, so once that comes out that he's pro-green this and pro-abortion and anti-gun, but no one's talking about that. And I think that he's going to pull enough Trump voters away to potentially hurt Trump in the swing states.
I think you've described the dynamic perfectly. I also think it's meaningless because he's not going to get on the ballot anywhere.
Really?
Getting on the ballot takes millions of dollars, discipline, and attention to detail. RFK has raised a decent amount of money, but nowhere near enough to do this.
But what if it's just a handful of states? I mean,
okay. So if he decides what I'm going to do is get on the ballot in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, sure. But I've seen no indication from them that that's their plan. They say they're going to run a 50-state campaign. And what's the rationale for just focusing on the battleground states? Then you're just
there's
running.
no rationale, but I think that if he's
there's no
not on the
indication.
ballot, if he's not on the ballot in the swing states, then you're absolutely right. The key is if you run a 50-state campaign, but you're on the ballot,
but he's
and
not,
you can get 4,000 votes in Michigan, that's a big deal.
But he's not going to be on the ballot in Michigan. There's no indication he's going to be on the ballot anywhere. You can speculate about the impact if he's on the ballot, but I recommend, and this has been my mantra since he announced he wasn't going to take the line, I recommend you think about how he's going to get on the ballot. It is really hard to get on the ballot. The two major parties do not make it easy to get on the ballot. So if you think he's going to show the discipline at the level required to get on the ballot, I'd say look at his record so far. Look at this campaign. They've not been able to organize much of anything except a few rallies. This requires a signature gathering firm.
Yep.
It's hard to do with volunteers. So you tell me what signature gathering firm is going to work for him. A Republican firm? Not if he's going to hurt Donald Trump.
Right.
A Democratic firm? Not the way he's run against Joe Biden. There aren't very many firms in the country that do this for a living. So if he tries to do it with volunteers, good luck to him, because they will not know how to gather the signatures, how to vet them to make sure people don't sign Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. I just don't see, unless he just decides, I'm going to put all my organizational ability, all my resources into getting on ballot in the battleground states so that I will affect the outcome. I just don't see any indication that that's his goal or that's what he'll do. And
right,
even then, I don't know.
So how will we know? How will we? I mean, that's the key. I get it. I agree.
He will start having to submit petitions.
Put your finger on this. If he's not on the ballot, then who cares?
That's my view. I get asked all the time, look at this poll, this 3-way poll. What does it tell you about who he'll impact? And I say, I don't care, because he's not going to be on the ballot. No one's going to be able to vote for him. Now, I may be proved wrong. His new campaign manager, who's his daughter-in-law, I believe, she may be an organizational genius, and she may figure out how to succeed in petitioning onto the ballot. But again, the parties don't want him on the ballot. They're going to challenge every signature. So even if a state requires 75,000 signatures, even if he gets 75,000 or 100,000, they'll challenge them. And chances are, given how short amount of time they have, how much money they have, how inept they are at organization, chances are they'll be kicked off the ballot in a lot of places.
And that's why I've been arguing that Cornel West not taking that Green Party line.
He's even less likely to get on the ballot.
Correct. That's my point, though.
But it's roughly the same with Kennedy. I agree, but it's roughly the same with Kennedy. News organizations spending money to poll RFK and the general should spend it on an investigation into how he's going to get on the ballot. Because I'm telling you, it's not easy. The parties do not make it easy in any state.
I think that that's 100% correct. I get it. And that's the point. That's why I'm saying that when Cornel West forewent the Green Party line and said, I'm going to do it on my own, it was like, okay, this is stupid now, because you're for the exact same reason that you're saying. He's not going to be on anyone's ballot.
Best day for the Biden campaign in the entire cycle was when he said he was doing that, because he's done as a factor, but it's the same for RFK.
So let's segue into the third thing, which is no labels. They're saying this new memo that they really want to focus on the swing states, and that they want to play the potential spoiler in the House. But let me ask you this: how hard is it going to be for them to get on the ballot?
Well, first of all, I think I did some work with them, I should say, so I know a fair amount about their operation. They're not that characterization of their plan was done by Democrats who are trying to stop them and accuse them of trying to help Trump.
Right, at third way.
Yeah, that's not what they're doing. They're going to get on the ballot everywhere. And the reason they're going to get on the ballot everywhere is because they started 2 years ago, and they have $70 million, and they've hired the best signature gathering firms in the country.
So here's my question. Why did they get signature ballot firms to work for them that won't work for, say, RFK?
Because they found a firm early on who agreed to do it. The one firm in the country that works with independents. Okay.
But so let's play this out for a second. I get it. Third Way, this Democratic progressive group, is trying to make the case that these guys are now in spoiler mode. Who does no label present a greater threat to then?
I think Trump, but it depends on who they put at the top of the ticket. right? They're saying they're going to have a bipartisan ticket, one Democrat and one Republican. They're leaning, I think, towards having a Republican at the top of the ticket. And if it's the right Republican, they'll hurt Trump more.
Yeah.
But again, they're in it to win. They're not in it to spoil it. And they're not going to do it if they spoil it. If they see an opening, and the polls suggest there is an opening, 70% of the country don't want a Trump-Biden choice. So if they choose it, I think they'll draw from both sides. And maybe even the data suggests roughly equally. But if there's a Republican at the top of the ticket, which I expect there will be, I think they'll hurt Trump a little bit more. But make no mistake, they'll have a balanced ticket that's meant to draw from both sides as equally as possible, and I think they will.
Yeah, but you and I both know. You and I both know that who's at the top of the ticket.
That's why I said
no one's voting for vice president.
Well,
they put
this. You're right. This will. You're right in general. This will be a little bit more. This will be a little bit different because again, it's going to self-consciously be a partnership between a Republican and a Democrat. Right. But the reason I say it'll likely hurt Trump at least a little bit more is because I do think they'll put a Republican at the top of the ticket. And as much as it will be a unique ticket in the partnership, that top of the ticket, as you said, correctly,
I have two things before we finish. Number one, can you give me, if you had a crystal ball, unless this is conflicting you, who would you, if you could tell them who would be the most effective Republican to put at the top of the ticket, who would it be?
Well, I'd rather it be a younger person, but I think Mitch Daniels would be the most effective.
You think Mitch Daniels would honestly do this?
You didn't say if people would do it. You would say, who would I tell them to?
Okay,
run?
Good point. Fine, fair enough. Okay, so of the people who would consider it, I
really don't know. I really don't know who would consider it, but I think the former governor of Tennessee, Bill Haslam. I think Larry Hogan. I think they do quite well with the right Democratic partner.
I think that Haslam would do too, but I can't imagine him ending his career like that. Let me just ask you one last question, and I've got 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds. How important should the Virginia elections be if we want to project what it means going forward?
I think the only issue is if we can tell from exit polls how big a deal abortion is in some of these swing counties. Except for that, I think I don't see much national significance.
Listen, that's significant. I agree. I wrote an op-ed in The Hill on this. These guys, every Democrat in the Commonwealth of Virginia is running an ad that says MAGA extremists are willing to take away your right. Anyway, Mark Halperin, I appreciate you being with us as always. Thank you. All right. The beauty of that conversation goes back to the whole point of this show. You heard what Mark said. If Robert F. Kennedy can't get on the ballot, and frankly, Cornel West, because he won't get on the ballot now because he chose not to hang out with the Green Party folks, then that's not going to make a difference. If you're not on the ballot and yet you see these polls, then they're meaningless, even in the swing states. But you heard what he said about no labels. They put a Republican at the top of the ticket, which is not what they've been saying forever. They've always been making entrees out to Joe Manchin and other Democrats. But if they swip this, and suddenly there's a Republican at the top of the ticket. And remember what I've told you before. This is about these swing states, Arizona, Georgia. We're talking about tens of thousands of votes. The entire election last cycle was decided by 43,000 people in 3 states. It was 70,000 in 2016. We're not talking about a lot of people. So every time somebody says, oh, that person can't win, it's not about winning. It's about spoiling. And that's what we're up against right now. I'm just telling you, understanding this game, how it's all played matters. And by explaining this to you, hopefully you can help others understand what's really going on here, because too many people are out there as purveyors of misinformation about what's happening in this race, who's up, who's down, who can win, who can't. Anyway, thank you for all your support. We've got Congressman Mike Collins. He's been memeing this whole speaker's race. He'll be here with us on Friday. Tomorrow, a great discussion about what's happening. Thank you for all your support of the show. Please continue to go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe. Even if you don't listen to it, this is super helpful to the show. YouTube, Rumble, subscribe and share. Thank you for everything. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Thursday for the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.